Welcome to our cake. My name is Rushil and today our guest Madhumita is going to talk about the topic podcast and you. So, ma'am, can you tell us what a podcast is and isn't radio a type of podcast?
Now, podcast is basically what has happened is like over a period of time now, television is moving on to the internet. So, over a period of time, radio will move on to the internet. So, essentially, when radio moves on to the internet, that becomes a type of a podcast. The difference is like a radio goes on a radio show, like if you're listening to FM, any of them, हाँ कोई भी 90 फीवर या कुछ तो उसमें तुमको पता है कि 9 PM को रेडियो जब तुम गाड़ी चलाते हो या मैं जब वापस आती हूँ 6 साढ़े 6 कॉलेज से तो उस टाइम देर इज अ पर्टिकुलर anchor Shivani or someone who comes on for that 6 p.m. show, correct? And now she's only available at 6 p.m. when I hear it on the radio. Now, if it was on the internet and if it was recorded and kept, she could be on at 6, but that becomes a recorded show. Now, I can approach it, or you can approach it at 9 p.m. also, or the next day, or it can become a whole list. So you can approach it, you can attach it at any point of time. You can approach it at any point of time. So that is typically what happens in a podcast is that it's an audio file, essentially an audio file that can be accessed at any point of time.
So, by now, I get what a podcast is and how it is different from radio, but could you explain a bit more about the basic difference in content theoretically between radio and podcast?
The basic difference in content, which you're talking about theoretically, is
Mhm.
that in a radio, there is radio is often heard like television, which is in the middle of a room where many people can walk in and out and
Mhm.
can look at it. Now, what happens in a podcast is that typically it is going to an individual if he accesses on the laptop or a
Mhm.
desktop or on his phone. It is, and you have your headphones. That the person who like you are the podcast creator, you're going to be talking directly to your audience, which could be possibly to me, or if you say your target audience is younger people like you, then individually to, let's say, Dia or Nazvi or whatever, whoever's listening to that podcast. So podcast, which is an audio file, typically has to be a more personal kind of a creation or a production because it is individually talking to people.
Yeah.
So by its very nature, it is less formal than a
Okay.
radio show which is being produced in Vivid Bharati or AIR FM or the BBC.
Okay.
Somewhere the FM channels, the kind of a personal, okay, now we are doing an evening radio show, मैं मुर्गा बनाऊंगा किसी का मुर्गा बनाया, and that kind of a thing. Now that is again personal. It is funny. It can have humor. It can have news as a content and be more strict, or it can do news in a funny way, or it can do it as like a reporter does.
Okay. What are the types of podcast?
You can just do a direct interview. You can, Rushil can be today, he can say, today I'm visiting this exhibition of
Hmm.
Vandana Jaisi, and it's a Lakme fashion show,
Hmm.
and we are going back, and you're talking to the microphone. We are going backstage. Let's see what is the audio, what is the
Hmm.
atmosphere like. Okay, now you said let's see, but what is
Oh.
happening audio wise,
Hmm.
there has to be enough ambient noise where people are saying the show's about to begin, and then you come and introduce
Hmm.
yourselves, says, okay, Nisha, who's a model, and you want to interview
Hmm.
Nisha, what is the show going to be like, what is it like, the preparation before the show, and she's your designer, and you have a conversation with her. That can happen. Or you yourself can say that, I'm at this place, and what is the best way to do sustainability in fashion, and this is happening, but there's not much happening in sustainability, although people say they are not wearable clothes and blah blah blah, and you do a 5-minute podcast.
Okay. And how long can a podcast session be?
So as long as you maintain interest,
Hmm.
so it can be 46 minutes, it can be
Hmm.
20 minutes, it can be 7 minutes, it can
Hmm.
be 5 minutes.
So what if my first podcast is of 15 minutes? Do I stick with that? What do you say?
Every podcast does not have to be the same length. It
Okay.
does not have to be the same length every time.
Okay.
That's good, because then people will start, and you have to kind of build an audience for yourself.
Okay.
Okay, so once you begin to build an audience for yourself,
Mhm.
um, you need to kind of, before you even begin to podcast, you need to make a plan on paper,
What are what? Okay, what sort of plans are we talking about?
which has create, put together your ideas, just the way you create put together ideas for creating your website. You will put together ideas to say what is going to be the identity of my channel. Best is that you talk about something that you are passionate about, and what something that you know, or you can uh, equip yourself with knowledge by reading more and more about it, isn't it? Now, for every time, just like in a video story, make a structure or a format for every show. Think of 13 episodes and structure. You can change the structure, because right now you're just making it for yourself. You can change the structure as you go along. Or you can say that each one should, one after doing three, there should be a little bit of a variety. So maybe if you've done three sitting in your room, the fourth one you can be going to the Lakme fashion show itself, or give it a bit of a variety, so that your
Okay, ma'am.
listener,
Can you
or
tell us
you're going
how
to comment
often
on,
one
let's
must
say, Gochi
publish a
coming out,
podcast? Like, what is
or
the
with a,
frequency? Like, is it
it is doing a
a
launch, and you're going
week
to talk about that
or?
launch.
Okay, ma'am. Can you tell us how often one must publish a podcast? Like, once in a week or once in a month? What is the like correct frequency of it?
How often should I publish my podcast? Now, this is a lot like blogging. How often should you blog? So it can be once a week. It can be once a day, which I think is too much. So it can be twice a week, as long as you have a rhythm in your show. And then your audience, and you keep saying that, okay, I'll meet you on Monday, or I'll meet you on Wednesday, or as you've seen some of these vloggers, they say, I have a new episode, and I publish it, they publish the content every Thursday at 7 p.m. Okay, now every Thursday 7 p.m. you come out with your new show of the week, but this show will become episode number 4, 5, 6, 7, and be available to your audience at any point of time to access. So they can see your back shows. They can begin to wait for the new show that is going to come out every Thursday if you're really, really good, or you've set up that kind of an intimacy of conversation. And once in a while you can even take phoners, like for example, someone can, if you say your phone number, then people can call you on the phone, and you can be recording from your end, and you can take a line out from your phone. You understand a line out?
No, ma'am.
So that from your phone ये जो headphone area है, you can take using a 3.5 jack, you can plug it into your laptop, and you can also record this session, that the conversation you're having on the phone. Okay, now you can put it into your in post production. When you take it to audition, this entire your conversation and this conversation, you can put it, you can insert these calls. So now this is not becoming live, but it is becoming as part of it, and you're cleaning it up. Or if you're, let's say, broadcasting live, this is now going live, like you see that on Instagram live video, this one has gone live. So you can also have it at that time. You can have these phones coming in, and you can have other people can also hear your phone, so that can happen. Or like you take questions which are coming up, that but audio, as far as possible, you should try and keep it as that audio you're recording.
So suppose I have recorded the session and cleared up the audio. What is the next step? Where should I upload it and what should I do? Like what should I do next?
Okay, now typically when you put up
Mm-hmm.
your podcast, it you need to create an artwork. Meaning it, like for example, I'll send you the stuff. What happens is that now you have put it yours, you have put the feed on WordPress. All right, now where do you for example, where will you host all of this? So you can record it on SoundCloud, or and um, you can, I mean, WordPress has its own kind of a player in which you can record called Castos. But the thing is that it is not a free recorder. You have to pay after the first.
So, ma'am, how about uploading a podcast session on our YouTube? Can we do that?
Typically, I mean, yeah, you can, in order to keep it in one side, you can. Of course, you can put it on the YouTube, but YouTube typically is meant for video files, right? But you can, of course, put it on YouTube, and from there you can. But you need to also put it on SoundCloud so that you can distribute to typically all podcasts. So, for example, the very popular ones that people go to is Spotify. Then there is Google Play Podcast. Then there is iTunes Podcast, and then there is Stitcher. These are distribution networks, or distribution platforms is the right word.
So, assuming I have recorded the session and uploaded it on SoundCloud or any other platform for the matter of fact, what is the next step?
So when you put your podcast on SoundCloud, if
Mm-hmm.
you do, what it will require you to do is to put a picture there. You see, because it's only an audio file. This is not a video file.
Mhm.
So you will create an interesting uh,
Artwork.
photograph or an artwork with the name of your channel, and you'll put it up, and it will go every time as 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, episode 1, episode 2, episode 3.
Um,
Okay.
Okay, so my last question for you is, what is the one thing that you will suggest avoiding or like to keep in mind while planning for a podcast?
um, the whole thing is, it's just like a film, or what the principles that you apply while you're making a show, a television show, or a film, or a magazine, or a website, is that if you talk about too many things,
Okay.
that's a problem, because then people don't know why they are coming here. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So it has to be a forward, like it has to have a direction to it.
Ideally, so therefore structure and angle of your show is very, very important.
Okay.
And to do this, you have to, if you just put on the radio, if you just put on your recording button and just keep talking and randomly, what happens is that people will listen to it if you have something to say for about 3 seconds, but they will move off if it is too all over the place.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Too
even when you're
distracted.
just talking, yeah, it's too distracted, or you're just thinking and the audience begins to feel that you're thinking before actually answering, or you're just talking, gabbing, as they say, gassing your way through, and just rambling. So therefore, when you talk, you have to, like a reporter does, create a structure. That means create talking points so that you are speaking along those points. And it's nice once in a while to take an interview, also have someone else on the other side so that you are talking about it.
Sorry, ma'am, I couldn't resist asking one more question that I have in my mind is that what is the importance of a structure and a plan?
Look, a plan is very, very important. All right.
Hmm.
A structure and a plan is very, very important. Discussing this structure, and so the first thing that you do if you are talking to an ex photographer, or you're talking to over here, I'm just saying Nazvi because she's in your team and I know her, and that you want the two of you are going to be talking about Comic Con, which is coming to Delhi, or both of you have visited Comic Con, and the two of you are going to talk about what you saw at Comic Con. Right now, even both of you, even before you come on and start the podcast, have to create a research, that both of you have to know everything that is happening or going to happen at that Comic Con, which means you're going to say that what is the agenda, what on day 1, day 2, day 3. If you are the host of the show, and over here Nazvi is not your friend, but she's going to be somebody that you're going to be talking to about the show. You have to
Yes.
make the structure to say,
Yeah.
I have 3 days of Comic Con, and let me look at what is happening on those 3 days. So you take out one show out of day one, you take out two shows out of day two, and you take out one show out of day three.
Hmm.
Now you tell, you either Nazvi is this kind of a person who's been on all 3 days and she knows
Hmm.
all of it, or you tell her that I'm going to be looking at, and if she's close enough to you, you can direct her. So you tell her exactly, I'm looking at this thing on day one, I'm looking at these two on day two, and I'm looking at this on day three.
Hmm.
So, and also you tell me what is it that you found that stood out in your mind, or suppose you don't know her at all. When you
Hmm.
come on to the interview and say, what is it that stood out in your mind about the 3 days of Comic Con? Which
Hmm.
was the most uh, enriching for you or
Okay.
most interesting for you? So then she will try, she will say, now you have to do your research. One.
Hmm.
Number two, you have to write out 15 questions.
15 questions. Okay.
Yeah. And now these 15 questions, you have to read through and familiarize yourself 3, 4, 5, 6 times, so that when she's talking, you're paying attention to what she's saying. And
Oh.
you're not only just looking at, oh, cha, this is going to be my next question.
Okay. Okay.
Because
Okay. Okay.
because it's a discussion, you have to pick up from something that that person has said. You don't know exactly what that person will
Hmm.
say. So if she says something that is very interesting, or something that is, there's a lot of masala in it, or she's
Hmm.
noticed something about a particular artist who
Hmm.
came and how well he interacted with the crowd, and he says he interacted very well with the crowd. Now
Hmm.
instead of going to the next question which you have already written down, you say, oh Nazvi, so how did he interact with the audience, what are the questions that were coming to him, how did he respond? So you
Hmm.
pick up from some of the questions that some of the things that that person has said. This is very,
Okay.
very important, because then this becomes, now again, you, if there is a one fifth question or a sixth question which you think is very, very important,
Hmm.
and she has started going off in another direction, and she's telling you
Hmm.
her art, so
Hmm.
you gently, you
Hmm.
butt into it and say, okay, now but how do you think about this, or you carry her
Oh.
thought forward.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay. Okay.
so
Okay.
those are interviewing techniques which applies to any media you create.
Okay. 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 Hmm.
Okay,
Yep. Ma'am.
now plan whichever way you plan. Like I
Hmm.
said, 15 questions, research work. You made a structure for yourself.
Hmm.
Yes, it can go off 99% or 98% of the times. It does go off. Now when it does go off, you have to have the presence of mind to bring it back, or to
Hmm.
close it, or maybe discover something that you didn't think that you would discover,
On the point. Okay.
or at the place. Yeah.
At the place. Okay.
So you're thinking on your feet. That is the most
Hmm.
important thing. Which is why don't
Hmm.
all the time stare. If you're doing a video interview, don't keep staring at those 12 questions, 15 questions. You should know it 100 times. You go over it before you get onto it. 100 times you go over and practice. Everything is about practice, to doing your welcome little speech.
Okay.
Yes, keep improvising so that it doesn't appear rehearsed.
Hmm.
Podcast is, like I said, personal to you and me. If I'm going to be reading out of a said script,
Hmm.
then I will not be able to establish that connection with my audience as I will be if I'm responding to something.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable insight. And that's all for this podcast. Thank you for tuning in.